critically analyzing global affairs. The Muckrakers on today's News Talk, TNT.
Well, hello, and a very warm welcome back to the Muckrakers with me, Andrew Eborn, joined by Dr. Ekinjar, Dr. George Samueli, and Martin J. And we're looking at Guantanamo and some shocking revelations. Martin, I was going to come to you.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on what George was saying. This institution, which is sort of it's crystallized U.S. foreign policy's hypocrisy so much, we tend to associate it with the Obama period. And Obama, still to this day, I think, received a certain amount of opprobrium from journalists and commentators around the world. But I think there is another darker side to it, which is that at the same time, despite in the Middle East, Obama was the US president who talked very much about soft diplomacy. It's as though on one hand we're talking about soft diplomacy and using our political might to talk rather than use military leverage in the region. But on the other hand, on the other side of that fence, we have this prison, if you want to call it that, which bypasses all international law, which is pretty shocking, really, even to this day. And what upsets me so much is that America is allowed to do that fundamentally because the EU lets it do that. It's basically Western European countries that don't do a tiny thing. The rest of the global south could kick up a fuss about it, but probably wouldn't dare. But the only real people, the only real institutions, the power houses of the world that could have done something about Guantanamo would have been EU countries, and in particular Britain. But we basically signed it all off. We're very happy about this setup that the Americans have created, and which is still running to this day. The interesting thing, George said that none of these people running it will receive any blowback, will receive any accountability or scorn, legally, morally, or otherwise. I think the other thing which is interesting is there doesn't seem to be any debate in Congress or even by journalists in America to ask, is this thing working? Does it actually have any functionality that we can hold up and present to the rest of the world and to say, look, here's one victorious example of what we've done well. This is where we've actually achieved something. We can't do that. We haven't done that because the Guantanamo is really a farce in that respect. It's a pantheon of failure rather than anything which we can hold in terms of success. And in the recent week, we've seen a lot of news now which have been talking about the case of the 9/11 architect, supposedly, because we don't know for sure, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who has all these cases racked up against him, 9/11, the appalling murder of Daniel Pearl in Pakistan, which I'm sure is close to the heart of our guest. But we don't know for sure if he really is the architect of 9/11, because what it transpires, when we look closely and we do the digging, we find that all of these testimonials, all of these witness statements that he's made have been made under the duress of torture. And I think this really summarizes, what a ludicrous farce this institution is, and he was quite happy to sign a testimony, a plea deal, which basically said, I admit to everything, and in exchange for admitting to doing all of these things I'm charged with, I will be spared the death sentence. Now, given that everything that he has written down has been extracted through torture, it's very hard to see any credibility there in any of this, what's going on. KSM, as he's called, was waterboarded over 170 times. Think about that. So I don't know really how to answer your question. I don't know where this institution is going. I don't know what's the future of it, but it doesn't seem to have any credibility at all presently.
And I want to just follow up on that, as you say, because that was all in the news last week, and people were saying that this deal that KSM, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, did, basically the families of those who were killed on 9/11 were not going to be happy because they were removing the death penalty. But the validity of the confession, as you say, and the horrendous organization, the horrendous circumstances and environment these people are kept in, as Dr. Ekenjar pointed out, they're kept in these sort of cages effectively, they're drugged up. Any confession has got to be raised. But what's even more abhorrent, and I use that word not lightly, is the Defence Secretary Lloyd George, having extracted this plea, if you like, and this plea deal, he's turned around and said he's going to throw out the plea deal in any event. So they've now got this confession, which they've been wanting to get for a long time. The plea deal's no longer on the table. What's your take on that, Dr. Ekenjar?
Well, the thing is okay, when we look at the definition of human rights, what is human rights? First of all, human rights is for every human being on earth, from birth to death, to be free and to live freely, right? And also, if we look at the 5 basic Human Rights Act, Article 2 is right to live. Article 3, freedom from torture or human degrading treatment. Article 4, freedom from slavery and forced labor. Article 5, right to liberty and security. When we think about all these acts, security, right to live, freedom from torture, and how fair it is that for these detainees, or I mean the future of Guantanamo, be any safe or be any different from the past. Okay, some of the detainees, as I said, not in the prisons now, 30 people, but we don't know. I think that the reason that, the institution is becoming this way, as I pointed out before, to me, it is still like a symbol for America. From my point of view, is to be able to say things, express things not in their soil, in Cuba, because it is easier. And then, again, there's so many hidden messages.
Yeah. You talk about the hidden message. I mean, obviously, they refer to optics, and people turn around and say, look, at least we're doing something. We've got the people we suspect are terrorists. We only suspect they haven't gone through the due process, but we're doing something. When you talk about layers, can you elaborate a bit more on that?
I will give you an example. I will tell you, I will share something like when I went to Pakistan with late Benazir Bhutto 2007, and after she got assassinated in Peshawar, near to Peshawar and Rawalpindi. Actually, there's a small village. And after she got assassinated, I wasn't, in the same car with her, but I was in her convoy as one of the journalists who was following her and reporting on her tour for democracy, or bringing democracy to Pakistan. Andrew, you wouldn't believe it, after a couple of hours, the blood stains were washed. I couldn't believe it, because it is the evidence, right? Literally, the evidence was deleted, erased, and I couldn't believe that. And I thought, after seeing this, I said to myself, I mean, there are different, scenarios, everything that we see as journalists, obviously, if you see things from firsthand with your own eyes, you perceive things from different angles as well, because you talk to people, you know the background story, you know the people, and then, that is the reason when I say hidden messages, there's so many hidden messages, in international politics. And it is not like maths, 2 + 2 is equal to 4. It's not like that. I mean, there's so many messages, there's so many layers. Look what happened in Iraq. right? What happened with ISIS, Raqqa? There's so many layers, right? We can talk about them hours and hours.
Well, give me an example. Just go for it, Martin.
No, I was going to just go back to the point that Martin was making, and which is a very, and you were making as well. It's a very salient point, which is, well, what are you going to do about Khalid Sheikh Mohammed? Now,
yes,
you obviously can't release him. The only evidence tying him to the 9/11 attacks is his confession, which is the confession under torture. So on the face of it, the deal that was struck, which is life imprisonment, would be not an unreasonable one, because at least the government avoids having to go to trial. They can't go to trial because there's no way that the evidence coerced out of him under torture will be accepted as valid evidence of it, because there is the Convention Against Torture. So if they do try and go for the death penalty, it's hard to see how the U.S. Supreme Court is ever going to accept that. I mean, you can't just simply impose the death penalty without a proper trial, and all the federal habeas protections and everything else. Remember, the Supreme Court has said that it has jurisdiction over Guantanamo. So that said, we do have jurisdiction, so you can't just get out of it and avoid the Supreme Court having an ultimate say. So in a way, this whole thing, the deal falling through, means this is just going to go on in limbo. And again, it just shows the uselessness of torture. I mean, it's basically, this is never going to come to any kind of completion. He will probably die unconvicted of anything, simply because of the pointlessness of this torture.
Well, I think, again, just labouring this point, because I think it's so important that on the table, from a lawyer's point of view, you've now got a confession, somebody saying they've done it. But the fact is, it was a plea deal. Does that then call into question, I say it should, does that then call into question legitimacy of that whole confession? Martin?
Well, that just raises the final point again, which George made, which is, where are we going with Guantanamo? If none of these cases can actually be nailed, if none of them can actually reach a point of finality, then it's an awful waste of taxpayers' money, and doesn't really hold the present administration in a great light. But I think the point made by Eshabel was quite valid earlier on. She said that Obama had picked this up and almost created it as an antidote, as a reaction towards Bush, W, and Cheney, and I think politics played quite a role in it. In the case of KSM, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, I think they fitted him up for 9/11. To be honest, I don't think they have any solid evidence which links him to 9/11. But the other cases which precede him are absolutely appalling and are better documented. In particular, the Wall Street Journal journalist in Pakistan, who he boasts of rather gruesome, he actually boasts of beheading him. And there was at some point a film on the internet which he was responsible for uploading. But for 9/11, I don't think they've got anything at all. And I think it's just it's a very, very easy way of fitting someone up, to say, look, all this other cases we've got against you, so you are a terrorist, you have done these things, and I think they'll leave it like that. It'll be a very convenient case for them to just leave it where it is. He will actually be the 9/11 bomber, whether he is or he isn't. So again, so many questions now as to what we do with Guantanamo, and it'll be interesting to see if Trump gets in, what sort of approach he'll have to winding down what is very much Obama's legacy.
Yeah, but Trump refused to. Trump did the opposite. Trump actually kept it going. So Obama kind of vowed to wind it down. He didn't, but Trump actually explicitly said, "No, we're going to keep this going."
Yeah, it's very concerning. I say, we will keep revisiting this, because on the table they have got a confession, and as I say, that confession is unsound for the reasons that we've highlighted. So we do need to keep looking back at this. Dr. Ekinci, I'm going to give you the final word. What would you like to see happen?
Well, actually, obviously, when we talk about human rights, I would like, humans more free, and they live in a better world, refined from the dark side of politics, and they have more freedom at their hands and live happily ever after. But how this is possible, I don't know.
Okay, well, some words, positive words. We will, one way, as I say, that sunlight is the best disinfectant. We need to keep shining a light on this. We're going to return to this subject. But for now, Dr. Ayşegül Ekinci, hopefully that's as close as I can get, Dr. George Samueli and Martin J, thank you all very much for joining me. I hope you'll join me again and we'll continue this discussion. I will see the rest of you tomorrow. No, not tomorrow. Tomorrow's Saturday. I'm all over the place, aren't I? I'll see you back on Monday. Whatever you're doing, have a great weekend. I think we all need one. Take care.